Well, let's start with a little word association this morning. What do you think of, what comes to mind when you hear the word blessing? What do you think of? Probably good things, right? Stuff that makes us happy, things that make us feel fulfilled, like we've got everything we want in life. That's what blessing or blessed means to most of us. A couple days ago, I did a little internet search on this word, and I entered blessing, and the first thing that came up were different social media sites. If you're not on social media, there's a little thing called a hashtag. It's a number sign next to words that people use to denote certain things. And so I clicked there, and I searched for what people put with hashtag blessed. Know what kind of stuff you find? You find things like photos of a family all smiling on the beach at sunset. They're all in their matching khakis and white button-up shirts. Everybody looks really happy. Some of you all have taken these pictures. I know. I've seen your Facebook. I have too. I'm guilty of this. And everybody's happy. The kids' hair is all neat and straight, and definitely nobody fought or argued while getting ready for this picture. Everybody's happy. Hashtag blessed. You know what you won't see when you search for these things? You're not going to see things like a photo of a living room that is completely trashed. There's clothes and toys and dirty dishes spread everywhere. All the kids are crying. At least one's got a bloody nose because they've been fighting. Over in the corner, the dog's chewing up one of the couch cushions. No one puts that up on social media and hashtag blessed. We don't do that. But I have to wonder why. Why don't we do that? If that's is equally a part of our life as is the smiling beach photo, why don't we do that? Somewhere along the way, we get this idea that blessing is only about those good things that make us happy and fulfilled. The stuff we want to put out there and show how awesome our life is. And then there's the stuff that's not happiness, not fulfillment. Stuff that's actually hardship. The stuff that stresses us out or maybe even causes us pain. Well, no, we're not going to project and put that out there. We don't say hashtag blessed. Often we don't even talk about it at all. And so the story we just read from Genesis, at first glance, seems to paint that term blessing in that very positive, happy, hashtag blessed light. We see God speak to Abraham, and he says, I will make a covenant between us, and your descendants will be as numerous as the stars of the sky. I will give you a land that produces bountiful crops, and your name will be remembered forever. That sounds pretty good. In the ancient world, they don't have things like bank accounts and stock portfolios, so your wealth is measured in those things, in the number of children you have, how many cattle you have, how much land you have. Abraham is being given all this stuff, and let's remember, at this point in the story, Abraham, he doesn't have any of that. He's a childless nomad, no descendants, no land, no nothing, and he's 99 years old. 99 years. That's the same age Billy Graham was when he died this week. Childless nomad. None of the trappings, none of the stuff. And so God comes along and says, I'll make a covenant with you. I'll give you every sign of wealth that this world can imagine. That's hashtag blessed right there. That's good. I'll sign up for that covenant. But then we get to the New Testament reading, and it kind of muddies the waters a little bit, makes it more complicated. Now, this is a passage also about being in covenant with God as a disciple of Jesus Christ. And we affirm that being in covenant with God brings blessing, but gosh, these things Jesus is talking about, they don't sound like the kind of blessing I'm looking for. I mean, Jesus says, if any want to become my followers, they must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it. Those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. And we look at this, what Jesus is saying go, hang on, what? That doesn't sound like blessing, that sounds like a curse. No thanks. So the Apostle Peter kind of stands in for the rest of us here. When he pulls Jesus aside and says, hang on, Jesus, you're the Messiah. You're the anointed one of God. You can't suffer and die. That's not how this works. Peter might as well be saying, Jesus, this is not the way to recruit followers. What are you doing? You are giving us a PR nightmare here. This is not #blessed. No. To which Jesus replies, Peter, you've got it all wrong. You're focusing on the things of this world, but I'm about something so much bigger. Their understandings of God's blessing are very much at odds. And that's the tension we encounter with the two passages we just read this morning. We've got two very different visions of what blessing is. At first glance, it seems like they don't have a whole lot in common. So as careful readers of the Bible, we're sitting there wondering, oh, God, what do I do now? I mean, do I have to go with one or the other? Do I have to choose between Abraham and Jesus? Go with one, not the other? Or could it be? Could it be that we could take another look a little closer, and possibly discover a kind of harmony that wasn't there or wasn't at least apparent on first reading? You know, one of the fun things about sitting up here in the chancel area every Sunday is during the first hymn, we'll sing the first verse or two, and I'll sing the melody, and that's nice. But then gradually the choir starts to make its way up here. They're about to gift us with the anthem, and I start hearing other things. Not the same notes, I'm singing other ones. I start hearing these very gifted singers sing all these different parts as they pass by until the last verse when they're all standing up there, and I hear this rich cacophony of sound all around me that's so much bigger than what I heard during the first verse. All blended together, they make something much greater than that simple melody. And the Bible's kind of like that. It's full of a lot of different voices, saying things in different ways that sometimes seem in tension, but when we start to listen, there's actually a rich harmony that shows up. So let's take another look. Let's let these voices from the Bible show us a depth and a richness that we couldn't see at first. So Abraham's blessing, his descendants and land and name, remember, being forever, those are all great and happy and awesome. But it's not like everything's been smooth sailing the whole way. Abraham has been on the road for 25 yees at this point. It's a long journey. He's been waiting and wondering when God is going to show up and deliver on this promise of descendants and prosperity. 25 years. And only in this passage we read just now does God show up and actually give a timetable. It says, hey, a year from now, that long-promised heir is going to show up. Abraham's journey's been tough. This 25 years has been full of all kinds of ups and downs. He's left his home and everything he knows to follow some God that he didn't even know until God showed up and said, hey, let's go. These 25 years have included some weird side trips. At one point, they went to Egypt, and Abraham had to pretend his wife Sarah was actually his sister to avoid being killed by Pharaoh. That got awkward. Abraham had a falling out with his nephew Lot, his closest relative. It was really painful, and eventually, because God took so long to deliver on this promise, Abraham kind of hedged his bets. He went ahead and had a son with his wife's slave Hagar. And that causes even more heartache down the road when he and Sarah have Isaac, a quote-unquote legitimate heir. It's a tough journey. Abraham's covenant with God, it brings great blessing and great happiness, but the happiness has got a lot of hardship along with it. We also see Jesus talk about hardship, about taking up our cross losing our life. That's some tough stuff. But there's happiness in the journey of the disciple as well. The ones that followed him around for those 3 years, they got to experience miracles. They saw people being healed. They saw Jesus feeding the multitudes. They saw him deliver these great and astounding teachings. There was a lot of happiness in that journey. They were there to experience the pain of watching their master suffer and die, and they got to be the witnesses to the resurrection, all of it together. For those original 12 disciples, for us, the happiness and the hardship, they go hand in hand. That's all part of God's blessing. And lest we forget, Jesus has already redefined for us pretty radically what blessing is. Elsewhere in the Gospels, in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus starts off by saying things like, "Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are those who are persecuted." Stuff that doesn't sound like blessing. So we have to scratch our heads and ask why. Why does that kind of hardship count as blessing? What is Jesus talking about? Jesus is saying this to highlight that when we find ourselves in those tough situations, when we're stripped of all those things that the world tells us give us a security and comfort, when all that illusion is gone, we realize we only can depend on God, and it turns out God's all we needed in the first place. So blessing, turns out, is a whole lot bigger than #blessed. Blessing is both the happiness and the hardship. They're right there together. They're two sides of the same coin. Without the hardship, we don't experience the full depth of the happiness. And without the promise of the happiness, the hardship is going to be just too much for us to bear. That's what it truly means to be blessed in our covenant with God. I was reminded about how happiness and hardship go hand in hand just a couple days ago. I was at a pastor's gathering in Brentwood, and a musician named Andrew Peterson was sharing some of his songs. And you know how, this is kind of a Nashville thing, you know how songwriters can't just sing their songs, they have to tell a long story in between each one? Lest I be too critical, the ones who are guilty of telling too many stories as pastors, so I'm in that too. So Andrew Peterson is telling a story that goes with this song. He starts talking about how on the Enneagram, it's a personality type indicator, kind of like Myers-Briggs and some others. On the Enneagram, he is a type 4. Well, I immediately perked up because I'm also a 4. And if you pick a type on the Enneagram to be, 4 is the last one you want to be. We're a complicated bunch of folks. Just ask my wife. I promise it's tough. 4s constantly feel the need to be special, to be unique, and so we whine and complain that no one understands us. We need everything to be really significant and full of deep meaning, so we're prone to these really extreme emotional highs and lows. It's frustrating. Again, ask my wife. So being a 4 is hard, so Andrew Peterson talked about how he would just pray all the time to God when he was feeling really low. God, why did you make me this way? Why do I have to go through all this pain, these ups and downs? What's going on? But then he said, well, his daughter is also a 4. And him being a 4 actually helps him understand his little girl really well, helps him guide her through all these emotional peaks and valleys that come with that type, and actually he's able to make her life easier because of it. So now instead of praying, well, God, why'd you make me this way? His prayer is, if all this emotional roller coaster and baggage, if that helps me be a better dad to my little girl, God, bring it on. His struggles, the hardship, make him able to more effectively guide somebody else through their own struggles and hardship. His tough stuff is, in its own way, a blessing. He's blessed to be a blessing to somebody else. Hardship, happiness, they're all hand in hand. That's how it works. in the kingdom of God. So if it's true that happiness and hardship are in tandem in God's blessing, then it stands to reason that we might have to really pretty seriously rethink how we talk about this stuff with each other. If all these hardship and struggles can play a part in blessing somebody else, we might just have to start being honest about the junk we're dealing with. Okay, quick survey. How many of us have already had this conversation this morning? You're walking by somebody in the hallway. You don't even really break stride. You just say, "Hi, how are you?" "Great, how are you doing?" Who's had that conversation already this morning? I have. Yeah, I'm calling myself. Okay, a lot of us. How many of us were telling the complete truth when we had that conversation? Not really, right? But we do it anyway. But what would happen if we actually said what was on our mind? What if we slowed down and passing each other in the hall? "Hey, how you doing?" We said, "Well, actually, I barely made it here this morning because my kids were just being really ornery trying to get them dressed for church. And since you're asking, I didn't sleep that well last night because stuff at work has just got me stressed out. And come to think of it, I just wonder what on earth I'm doing here at church because I look at the world around me. I see kids getting killed in school, and I wonder what this loving God we talk about, why that God would let this stuff happen over and over again." What would happen if we did that? Actually, what if we went even farther than just saying what's on our minds, which is pretty radical in and of itself? What if we not only said what was on our minds, but then we went ahead and affirmed that God was right here in the midst of all of it? That no matter how crummy we may feel at the moment, that we know and believe that even if we can't see it, God's blessing is somewhere in there, is taking us somewhere. What would that be like? Does that sound like something we should do? Yeah? I see some nods. Are you sure? Okay. You just said, yes, we're going to do it. I'm actually going to ask you to take the next couple of minutes, and we're going to get real with each other. In a minute, I'll ask you to turn to your neighbor and just tell them something you're going through right now. It doesn't have to be some, deep, dark secret or anything. Just something that's kind of tough. Something that's causing us some stress, maybe even a little heartache. And once your neighbor tells you whatever that is, we're not going to try to fix or say anything trite like, "Well, this is God's plan." Don't you hate when people say that? This is God's plan. I can't stand that. The only thing we're going to respond, we're going to say three things to each other. We're going to say, "God hears you. I hear you. And we'll get through this together." Let's practice that. God hears you. I hear you. We will get through this together. Okay, one more time. Let's do it all at once. God hears you. I hear you. We will get through this together. Okay, cool. Let's turn to your neighbor. Let's get real. Let's respond with love. We'll take a few minutes to do that. Well, guys, I hate to break this up, but I got to call us back together. If I run over noon, I will hear from some of you guys with lunch reservations. So, what's that? Hey, y'all, we're being honest. We're being honest. All right, so how did that feel? Being real with one another, being open. Did it feel good? Yes. Yes, it did. All right. So now that we've taken at least a few minutes to drop some of those pretenses, we've begun to share both some of our happiness and our hardships. We're going to close by praying a prayer of confession together, and this is naming that stuff that we just talked about to God and to one another, that we're not who we want everyone else to think we are, but God knows us better than we know ourselves, and we trust in God's forgiveness and eternal blessing. Let's pray together. We confess to you, all-knowing God, what we are. We are not the people we want others to think we are. We are afraid to admit, even to ourselves, what lies in the depths of our souls. We hide our pain behind masks of happiness, confidence, and success. but we cannot hide our true selves from you. We know us better than we know ourselves, and you call us your beloved. Help us not to shrink from self-knowledge. Teach us to honor your image in ourselves. Give us courage to put our trust in your guiding power. Give us humility to acknowledge our brokenness to our brothers and sisters. Give us faith that you will use our healing to heal others. Raise us out of the paralysis of guilt into the freedom and energy of forgiven people. For we who through long habit find forgiveness hard to accept, we ask you to break our bondage and set us free through Jesus Christ, our Redeemer. Amen. Friends, may the Almighty and merciful God who created us, redeems us, and sustains us in every moment, give us the courage to be honest and open about all we bring to the table, and may we let God use it for the healing and redemption of us and of the world. Amen. Amen.